doing. So what we're going to look at is Michael Porter's ideas for a good strategy. And this is going to be applicable to two of the cases that we have. The material I put together that I can't find and we'll find as soon as we hang up together dealt with this in respect to enterprise. And you have an assignment for this next time. We're going to do the enterprise class and case and class. And I will put out a list of things I want you to be able to discuss later on this evening. And that'll be just a straight piece of information with an announcement indicating that it's out there. And so it shouldn't have any trouble with technology on that. But the other one that we're going to have the case on that I'm going to use tonight is Ikea. And both of them are excellent studies for how to use a sound strategy. So Michael Porter puts out 5 tests of an excellent strategy. There was a whole chapter on that in the Magretta book. And they are to have a unique value proposition. And you know, we've repeatedly talked about the fact that you want to have something where either you do things differently or you do different things to uniquely identify yourself in the marketplace with your product offering. Secondly, have a different tailored value chain. We've gone through some of that. We're going to take a look at that again this evening. Number 3 is clear trade-offs and choosing what not to do. And you all have had a little bit of study with the trade-offs in respect to Southwest, and you turned in a paper on that. Now, in many cases, what you called a trade-off was an observation. It was not a trade-off. What we clearly want, so we're going to be taking that a couple more steps with the other 2 companies that we're looking at on this, that being Enterprise and Ikea, to see how a trade-off actually works. It means giving up something to get something. It's a conscious decision not to serve some customers or some groups of customers. And that's having absorbed that expense, what you do is you have an opportunity to serve the other people that you really do want to serve and to do it super well without losing your, and the word is focus, without losing your focus on what it is that you were intending to do in the first place. Everything for point number 4 of the 5 tests, activities fit together and they reinforce one another. So that means 1 + 1 = 3, 2 + 2 = 5. And we'll take a couple examples on that this evening. And then finally, Porter talks about strategic continuity, how things that are done repeatedly, and they're the strategic things that you want to see people do. As you see them do this over a period of time, what you get is an improvement in the overall perspective or overall way in which the company operates. And you know, that's true whether we're talking about a company or any other kind of an organization. It's very true with nonprofits as well. Well, let's go back to the value proposition. Same chart you've seen probably 4 or 5 times, but it's a little different than your typical marketing segmentation chart because it deals with with 3 different aspects of the customer relationship. Whom you're going to sell, what are you going to sell them? And in that respect, what needs will you be satisfying? And at what relative price? And so the determining what customers is traditional market segmentation. And I have pointed out before, and I'll point it out again, that this was eye-opening to me because I've always done marketing analysis or analyses looking at the demographics of my customer set. And I always looked at my customer set as being the end user. But in many cases, we have multiple layers of people who are involved in that marketing effort. And those are the channels. And you have to be equally sensitive to the needs of each prospective buyer on that chain of activities, so that when you get to you get the chance to get at the ultimate end user. And well, we'll just leave it at that for right now. Which needs? There are all kinds of products that you can offer if you were a company, but there are different features that you can include with it and services that you would include with it. So even though we identify the specific the specific product we're going to sell, we have to determine what needs will the customer have and what do we have to have besides the raw product in order to satisfy those needs. And finally, what you have to do is determine what relative price, not what actual price, but what relative price, because that's how you're going to identify where you fit. Relative price based on premium or discount, or at an equal with other competitors that are out there. And this will partially be defined by which needs you're going to satisfy. If customers need to have a lot of hand holding, and which I certainly am finding true with this technology stuff, if you need to have lots of hand holding with it, it means you got to pay more for it. And if you can get by with just a training manual, well, it's not going to be quite as expensive, but could be something above the cost of the raw product. I don't know whether you've ever taken your iPhone, if you were using the iPhone, and tried to get information on what you could do with it and how to work it. In order to do that, they have a manual inside the library of things you can get, but you have to pay for it. It's an extra feature, an extra cost to get that. So as each of these three characteristics are identified, it'll help to define what your final product offering is going to look like. Now, in terms of the need, what we're looking for really is people with common needs. That's the most efficient way to sell somebody, because you can approach them, the segment or the people that you choose to sell, you can approach them with all the same product and product service attributes. And then with pricing, there's two terms, and you should write these down. Overserved and underserved are very important concepts in strategy setting. People who are overserved are dealing with products that give them more than they need, but always there's a price associated with that, getting more than they need. People who are underserved have to provide workarounds. They have to come up with a different way to approach the problem to get it solved to their satisfaction, because the existing products don't do the job. So where people are overserved or underserved, and this is particularly true in a blue ocean context, where what you're trying to do is to increase the amount of service you give to those who are underserved and remove some of the services that are provided to the customer where they're overserved and don't want to pay as much. And always where we want to get, whether we're using Porter's ideas or using the blue ocean ideas, is to get to just enough, where people are willing, giving only those things people are willing to pay for. Number three, which we've gone through several times and I have not done it enough, is have a distinctive value proposition. Well, no, I got ahead of myself. I was thinking this was going to be trade-offs. My mind got ahead of my mouth, or maybe my mouth got ahead of my mind, I guess. But with the distinctive value proposition, we are trying to decide what customers we want through market segmentation, what needs these customers have, or that are not being met exactly the way the customer wants them met, and then determining price. And always with the idea in mind to offer just enough in terms of product for price. We don't want to charge people for stuff they don't need, and we don't want to leave them not getting fully satisfied with the product that they're getting. Trade-offs. Point number two. Porter says this is the linchpin. This is the thing that makes things happen, because it will define how effectively you are servicing your customers. Because you can have product features that are incompatible. Part of this is charging stuff for things that charging for stuff that people don't need. Sometimes the activities are incompatible. A custom shop won't be efficient in running long run orders. And I could tell you about that as a personal experience. For 3 or 4 years, I was on the board of directors of a publicly held company down in Jamaica. And my family had been involved with this company some 30 years before. Excuse me, had sold the interest in it, and another major company had bought that interest. But excuse me again, it's my COVID cough. It's nice and dry. Some years after that, the Jamaican government went socialist, and they ended up acquiring all of the major industry on the island. And one of the responses was that the major buyers of our product ended up leaving the island. Rather than allow their business to be taken over, they went to Barbados or to Trinidad and set up their facilities there. The company that had existed, where I ended up having an interest, ended up getting bought back for $1 from the Jamaican government when they determined that socialism doesn't work. And the company ultimately ended up failing, even after the capitalist people took it over again. And the reason that it did was because everything in the company had been set up for long run, high setup cost, but low production run orders. And all of the long run customers had moved off the island. So all that was left was the little short orders. Now, what we were producing there was folding boxes. It would be something like a toothpaste box. You know, you get the tube of toothpaste, but for it to set up in the drugstore or the grocery store, they have to set it so you can see it. And a tube is not going to set up, not stable to set up. So you put it in a paper box, and that allows it, it gives it the stability. And one of the customers was Colgate-Palmolive. And so that was a big customer. Well, they moved off the island, and what was left, as I said, were the short orders. But all of the equipment was designed with high setup cost and low run cost. With small orders, you couldn't amortize out all of that setup cost in the short order that you'd be running. So the equipment became inappropriate for that kind of business. And it turned out to be so expensive to make a switch to a different kind of equipment that would have addressed the remaining industry on the island, that it was better to shut it down, which is what we did. So when you get those kinds of incompatibilities, it can end up costing you the whole company. Sometimes there's inconsistencies in image or reputation. And it'll be interesting as General Motors is now beginning to offer all electric cars, whether they'll be able to convince customers that that is a good car with the General Motors label on it. So we'll be seeing that just in the next 6 months to a year. But the example here of Ferrari shouldn't be making SUVs. It's not consistent with their image or reputation. And what the advantage of doing trade-offs is that real trade-offs stop competitors. And I have told you about the problem of straddling, which we saw with Continental Airlines trying to straddle two markets, the full price business model and the low price bus rider model, and they weren't able to successfully do it. So you have to choose what to do and what not to do, and then stick to it. And constantly, you'll be running into the problem called feature creep, which means that a customer asks for some little thing that's different, and you roll over and play dead and give it to them, and don't get an opportunity to recover the cost of giving that special benefit to one customer, because the extra cost gets incorporated to every one of the customers that you have, and they're not interested in paying for it. Even though the one customer that wanted something extra may be willing to pay for it. So Porter says that strategy is making trade-offs in competing, and the essence is to choose what not to do. And he just emphasizes this again and again. And this is something that you'll want to look at again as we go through the case with Enterprise Rent-A-Car and also with Ikea. Fit is where the values of one activity are enhanced by the way another activities are performed. This is where there's an interconnectedness. To do what you do, it really is to get the 1 + 1 = 3 in this case. And we're going to look at that here with respect to Southwest Airlines, because many of the things they do are built around the fundamental thing of going point to point in their service, and doing it basically out of second-tier airports. So they have recustomized the plane, which is very difficult to get that done, except that they were such a big buyer of Boeing products. They reconfigured the plane so that they would have be able to put up 2 service modules on the side of the plane, one providing food and the other one taking out the waste material simultaneously. And that had not been true of any of the other any of the other 737 sold to other companies. So to get the value of 1 + 1 does equal 3 in that case. The same is true from using all of one style of airplane. This gives them the optimal cost of running the airplane. And because they use the smaller airports, they get the benefit of quick turnaround and avoid all the issues of heavy traffic that you can have at a big airport like LAX. They chose to go with the short flights, which allows them more airtime because they spend very little time on the ground between takeoff and landing, or landing and takeoff. And getting more airtime means that they can generate more revenue with greater number of passengers, but really the key is passenger miles, and they get more passenger miles by keeping the plane in the air. So that's just a few of the areas where things have been done. They were trade-offs, conscious trade-offs. If you're going into small airports, it means that you're going to not get the high number of through passengers that come into a large international airport. But that was a conscious decision they made. Now, you may be saying, well, they now fly into LAX and they fly into Atlanta and some of these other large airports. But this is an emerging strategy as they move along. But basically, they all are built around short flights, second-tier airports, always same plane, possibly even not taking on a full load of fuel, because it costs money to fly the fuel from one point to another if you're not using it. But they can get this set up to have the optimum balance on their fuel loads as well. The fifth thing is continuity. And this is what makes things work. And we're going to see this, I think, with if I've got the slide set up correctly here. We'll see this with respect to Ikea. And all of these things, the tailored value proposition, the trade-offs, and the fit, are not just single incident activities where everyone gets the picture. It takes time. This has to be integrated into the way people think. And so if you go to Disneyland, my first adventure there was in the summer of 1955. The park was about 3 or 4 weeks old at the time I went there. And, you know, the things haven't really changed. There's a lot more rides, There's a lot more crowds. There are new rides and new other things that get offered. But basically, the way that park is run, the attitude they have toward their customers, and the attitude that they display and the people that work there have been unchanged in 45, 65, 65 years. And this is a case of really getting the continuity in the way things are done. We'll see this in a very few other companies because there are very few that have been successful at putting these five strategic ideas together. So it takes time to allow these things to develop. This allows customers to know what you stand for, and when you came to California, what the experience was going to be. And of course, if you went to Florida, you'd know it too. You know what the experience is going to be because you know that it always is presented in the same fashion. And this allows your suppliers and your channels of supply to support you by creating or enhancing your performance by creating and providing products in a way that will make your company operate better. You might be interested in 1955 when Walt Disney started the park. One thing he was aggravated about is he couldn't get enough land to keep people away. And that's why he bought 50,000 acres in Orlando when they opened their second park. So he'd get a little breathing room, be able to stretch out and not have to worry about somebody putting up a little cheapo motel right next to his property. But he didn't have enough money to do all these things. And so what he did is he made deals with major companies where they would co-invest in the park, and they would then get a lifetime exclusive in selling products in the park. One of them was Golden Books, and I think they're still around. Another one was Carnation, and I know they are still around. They're part of Nestle now, but all the ice cream there is sold by Carnation. He also honored the businessmen who did support that by setting up a place that you may have heard of called Club 33. And at one time, that was going to be his private apartment above the New Orleans Square part of the park. But they turned it into a private club. And today, you probably have about a 5-year waiting list to get in. And I'll guarantee you the membership to be able to go there and have your meals and also have alcohol, because they do serve alcohol there. Probably $10,000 initiation fee, and probably at least $1,000 a year, and more likely $1,000 a month to be able to have that advantage. You get free tickets when you go there to Club 33. So that's one of the benefits about being a big booster for Disney. With a big, if you got to have a big company too. All of the activity, the more you do it, it really improves all of the activities that you do and the fit, the way they play together to give you the bonus. Another advantage of it is that it makes managing easy because it's just like we've said about mission statements, vision statements, core values. The core values tell the customers what we do. The mission statement allows them to tell us what they see that we're doing. But because these are understood by both the individuals involved and also by the suppliers and customers, it makes it much easier to manage the business. Everyone knows what to do. One of my students a few years ago said that they were at Disneyland where they were working. There were only 2 people that carried around those little scoops that would pick up stuff off the ground. They have a little broom and they could sweep up gum wrappers and other kinds of junk, uh, paper wrappers from some other piece of food. They could pick those up so that the park was always clean. And he said there are only 2 people in there because everyone understands if it's on the ground, pick it up and put it in the garbage can. That's part of what is inculcated into their brains early on. It makes everything follow 2 of my 4 words, focus and simplicity. Improves the focus and simplicity of strategy because everyone understands what they're supposed to do. And this means that decisions are made at lower levels because everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And everyone has been told repeatedly what that involves. Edgar Schein is I think he probably now is was a professor of human behavior and psychology at MIT. And he said this about culture. He said, culture is a way of working together. Now, I'm going to stop here for a parenthesis. I said that I had defined culture as the way core values are lived out, the way core values are lived out in the company. Schein says about this that culture is a way of working together toward common goals that have been followed so frequently and so successfully that people don't even think about trying to do things another way. If a culture has formed, people will autonomously do what they need to do to be successful. And there's much wisdom in that. And don't forget that as you move on to the companies that you're going to go to work with. So let's take a look at one of the companies that has been successful in implementing these things, and that's Ikea. Okay? Say amen if that's all right.
Amen.
Okay, good, because I'm just getting ready to lower the windshield here at my place and look, make you raise your windshields there, the shade, so I could see who you are, who is still here. So IKEA's value proposition is good design and function at a low price. Now, I'm assuming here that everyone knows who IKEA is. And many of you may have already shopped there. Is that true?
We just went last week.
How'd you do?
Bought way too many things and I've only built 2 of them.
Okay, is this Trish?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you have the young ones, so it's time to start getting their own furniture for them.
Yeah, we like I told you, we just got a home, and so we went and we bought them all kinds of furniture for their rooms, and a few things for the distant learning at home, their desks and things like that. So it kept us busy.
Well, I think I've now asked you to read as an assignment to read the first couple of chapters of How Will You Measure Your Life? And in the very first part of that, Clay Christensen talks about his son having one of those problems that needed to be solved immediately. And that was to get his, he moved into town. He got an assignment with in a different city than his home city. And to get himself all set up, he had only the weekend. Came in on Friday, had to go to work on Monday, and the apartment had to be furnished. And so IKEA was the ideal way to do it. And that, I guess, is what you're finding as well. So their baseline is good design and function at a low price. And their target customer is a person with a thin wallet. Is there anybody in this room who does not have that characteristic? It's certainly true in the room where I am right now.
Can you repeat the question?
Is there anybody in this room where all of you students are, who doesn't have a thin wallet, particularly when you look at the 27th of the month? There's always too much month at the end of the money. So their target customer is somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, that they want to get a task accomplished, but they want to do it within some kind of a budget. They, by definition, don't expect to meet the needs of furniture buyers, of all furniture buyers. And this is one of the trade-offs that they've made, that there are a large portion of the population that would not be interested in IKEA furniture. But those people who have the common thread, not a whole lot of money to spend, and want something that's good and will work at a low price, those are the ones they want to service. Now, give you a little history. This company began in 1943, and they didn't even get their first store until 1958. It was started by a man named Ingvar Kamprad in one of the smaller cities in Sweden. Obviously, 1943, I would assume it's obvious to you. It certainly is to me because I was born in 42, that this was in the middle of the Second World War. And he was interested in getting into furniture. And among the problems was that most of the furniture were hand-me-downs in Sweden, that they were built well and were able to go from one generation to the next. There were a number of retail stores, but the retail stores had really set up their defense mechanism. You know, when we talk about the effect of the five forces, what they did, what the other guys had done was to set up a lot of defenses to make it difficult for new entrants. And so, for example, they told potential suppliers to Comprad that if the supplier sold him, they wouldn't buy anymore. So it became difficult for him to get directly into the market. And what he did is he went through a catalog. And between 43 and 58, he worked out all the kinks and the mechanism that he wanted to have, which was to do outsourcing around the world, to run the very limited number of design options, have all of the furniture that was needed, but with a limited number of options, and was able to buy down his costs, both because he was willing to go around the world to find suppliers, but also because he was willing to give large orders of common items. So his first store opened in 1958, began as a mail order business. Well, you can see these are some of the facts I just said, that the market was primarily hand-me-down, and the retail furnishers kept him out of the supply of furniture. But the prices for furniture were high. So this also opened up a niche for people who had a thinner wallet. So in this process, isn't that amazing? I remembered all this. I just dug out this file from a couple of years ago, and here I could remember pretty much what I put on the slides. Very good, Bill. His style, which is the same today, and in spite of the fact, everybody, that this was just a little guy working out of a small city in Sweden. He died about 18 months ago. And at the time he had built this up, it's all a private company. And his worth, his financial worth when he died was $7 billion. And he was in the top 20 richest people in the world. So he always, right from the onset, operated with a very informal atmosphere. Everyone wore plain street clothes. There were no status perks. Everyone was treated the same. Had a lot of simplicity to their organization, but a lot of attention to detail in the way they executed. Very cost conscious, penurious. They used common sense with the way they did everything. So, Trish, I suspect you could identify with that kind of a job interview. Are you still there, Trish?
I'm here, sorry.
Okay, But you got to assemble it, and that's
There's
how
no words on the description, so you just look at the pictures, use your common sense and build everything.
there you go. And they always, I think they always give you a few extra parts. Not to confuse you, but if you lose one of them, you could still get the thing put together.
Yeah, yeah, 2 tools per box, right?
There you go.
Yep.
So here's an example of how they would do their cost consciousness. They started out with one of their little items, with a thing called a bang mug that was sold starting in 1996 for 50 cents. And to get the cost down, they really detailed how they put it together. First of all, this is a clay mug, and it is fired in a kiln. They chose not to use red pigment, because that was the most expensive color. Now that's interesting to me, because I know that Henry Ford, who was also cost conscious, said every car had to be black. You can have any color of a car you want as long as it's black. And I never understood that until why he was so narrow-minded. But what somebody told me is that black paint dries quicker, and therefore he could get more volume through his factory by using only black paint. So it had a good economic reason for doing that. Initially, what they did is they shipped everything on pallets, so they were able to maximize the number of mugs on a pallet, moving it from 864 by changing the rim on the cup to 1280, and then further redesigns kicked it up to 2024 per pallet, which ended up with a 60% cost savings. Now, in case you didn't think about it, freight for furniture is a serious problem, because if you take something like a table, you've got a flat surface for the tabletop, 4 legs with plenty of air around the area under the tabletop. And that means that you're shipping a lot of air. And a lot of times you're shipping it long distance. So it's very expensive, relatively expensive. By doing more redesign, they increased their kiln capacity and firing, and therefore were to bring down their costs even further. So now, in the area of trade-offs, these are conscious decisions they made, and kind of think about this, because I'm going to be coming back at you when we get to tests and exams. This will be one of the key concepts, is this trade-offs. And what they did is they used a narrow style range with the Scandinavian or Danish modern style, with relatively few fabrics and finishes, which meant that there was not a lot of choice for the customer, but their costs would go down. It allowed them to buy in bulk, and that gave them a better price. They provided minimal in-store service. And so essentially this is all self-serve. And what they did was put out a tag that gave all the description you would normally ask of a sales associate in order to make a purchase. But the way they were able to finesse having the actual live clerks was with this name tag. And this allowed them to have lower prices. They also designed the store to have the warehouse in the store. They outsourced delivery to the customer, and this allowed for other savings as well. What you do is you just pick what you want with an item tag that tells you what the number is, what the price is, and all the features and benefits of the product. And then you go get the product in what they call a flat pack, and you can ask Trish, you self-assemble. They consciously decided to locate in suburban locations where they could have free parking. Now you'll find that some of the major old line furniture stores are downtown in whatever city you're dealing with, Los Angeles being one, but also Long Beach and probably Riverside and Glendale and Pasadena, the larger true cities in this area, would probably have the furniture store, but also would have pay for parking or street parking, but you might be a week away or a block away from where you're going to take the furniture. By having the suburban locations, there's lots of free parking, and also you park close to where you're going to get your furniture. Now, in the conscious trade-off areas, here's some things that IKEA did that would make them different from a typical furniture retailer, and which would allow them to be very difficult to copy. So they have low price. So on the left-hand side in the product, they had low-priced, modular, ready-to-assemble designs, whereas a typical furniture store is going to have higher priced, fully assembled products. They don't allow custom options. In a typical furniture store, you have customization, and what you may have to do is order the furniture and it gets built for you. But you have lots of variety, and therefore you need lots of sales help in order to make sure that you're choosing something that is harmonious from a store designer's perspective or home designer's perspective. Everything, the product is driven by cost, manufacturing cost, simple design, simple style, all means that it's cheaper. In a typical furniture store, the design is driven by image, materials, and variety. So IKEA is keep it simple, which is number 2 on my list of 4 words. The typical furniture store is going to go for variety, which means more cost. In terms of the value chain, if you look at IKEA, they have a centralized in-house design for all their products. And whereas a furniture chain will probably have, or a major furniture dealer will probably have some or all of the lines from outside rather than being designed in-house. In IKEA, all styles on display are in the huge warehouse. The typical furniture dealer, because he has so many choices, is going to have a lot smaller number of potential SKUs on his floor. IKEA on the left-hand side has large on-site inventories. Again, because of the variety, a typical furniture retailer is going to have smaller ones, smaller inventories. IKEA has limited sales help because they have the information tags. In typical furniture store, you have lots of sales help. Long hours of operation at IKEA, traditional retail hours for the typical furniture retailer. Now, IKEA has been doing this since 1958, and nobody has successfully copied them. And it's because in trying to do the copying, anything that they pick up on an IKEA idea will require the other guy, the typical furniture retailer, to have to compromise some of the things that are distinctive about his company. And so you end up with this problem of potentially straddling. Now, IKEA sets up a large showroom warehouse combination. All items are displayed in a studio setting. This is the way the store would look on the inside. And they have a maze that you get to follow when you walk in. Is this true, Trish? Do you have to walk all around to get to where you want to go?
Yes, I did discover like hiddenly, like in the hidden, there's elevators that can like take you right back out, but it's literally one way in, one way out. The arrows, especially with COVID. But I like the elevators. Like if I had to get out of the way in order to realize there's an elevator, so it's pretty interesting. They want you to see everything.
And they take you at the back end. You can go to the restaurant.
Yes.
Which cheap food. It might be, I should say inexpensive. I don't know whether it's cheap or not, but you have to follow the path. And what that means is there's going to be a lot of impulse purchases.
Exactly. They want you to see everything.
Yeah. So they do have a variety of things in the store for you. They create a shopping outing. Today's shopping is mostly grab and go. You know, they say that men are hunters when they go shopping. They're in and out of that store as quickly as possible, knowing beforehand what they're going to get, and then they're grab and go. Whereas women have a tendency to go on a shopping safari. And what they want to do with their system is to create the shopping safari, but for the whole family, so that you get the chance to go do something as a family together. They got the cafeteria. But that's after you go through the whole store. It is inexpensive, but you got to clean your own table. That's how they keep it inexpensive. Entertainment for the children plus babysitting if you want to take advantage of that. And they have car-friendly locations with free parking, again, to make it easier to do the shopping. Now, with the flat packs, this is one of the things that they developed that is a strategic component of the way they offer things. And it all began because somebody couldn't get a table inside the car they had. And so one of the employees helped them disassemble the table and put the pieces in the car. So that seemed to be a powerful idea, and they went to unassembled, prepackaged items, and the impact was, number one, the customer can take with. There's no shipping damage, which is a major problem for furniture because my kids just got a couch here. I think it takes up half the family room in my home. And I got a big family room, but it really takes a lot of room in there. And they waited about 3 or 4 weeks before they got it. And there was a hole in part of the fabric. And this is not atypical. That happens a lot of times with this large furniture. The impact, and I said that inbound shipping costs are high because the item involves so much air and so little actual hard volume. They reduced their inbound shipping costs by 84%, and they eliminated outbound shipping costs. Although if you need it, they can give you same-day shipping. And overall, you have same-day delivery because you can take it with you rather than waiting 5 or 6 weeks for a custom ordered item. And what they found was customers were willing to pay more for the furniture when they had this capability. Now, Porter will tell you that you get sustained competitive advantage when you revamp your value chain, and that is changing the way you do things or doing different things. And what they've done is to maneuver things around on their value chain, which I hope you remember is where you sit on a value system. That this is where your company resides on the value system. And one of the things that they've done, if we were to go look at the chart that I've showed you a couple times already, that shows all of the different functions, the operating functions and the support functions in a typical organization. They have essentially eliminated the delivery and assembly function and have given those to the customer. And that has tremendous cost savings. So when the buyer gets these benefits, it's very tough for competitors to copy because they have to compromise their own value proposition. And so that's the best kind of thing for getting a sustained advantage, where if somebody wants to copy it, they've got to compromise their system. When Continental Airlines tried to copy Southwest, they ended up badly compromising their own regular system. So this is the best position to be in. This is why the trade-offs are so important and why you need to understand it if you're going to be valuable to your employer and give them sound advice. So fit is where you get an enhanced activity. And you know what? We're running out of time. Is anyone need to go? I know you can all go without even telling me. But is it okay to continue on for another couple of minutes?
I think
Huh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. If you got to go, you got to go. Now I'm going to skip right ahead on this. I'll put out this set of slides, but I would like to have you look at it. There's 12 different items in this list of slides, and these show how the fit works, and you can compare each of the 12. But I'm not going to take you through them because that would take more than a couple minutes. So there are 12 all together that just each of them reinforces the other, and you'll see as you look at them. And you'll also, I believe, be able to find this in Porter, and you'll find it later on in the Christensen book. If you just look under the index for Ikea, it'll address you to some of the things that he points out about Ikea. So continuity is the thing that makes everything works together. The elements of strategy, the tailored value proposition, trade-offs, and fit all take time to develop, in their case from 1958 until the present day, even after Comprad had died. They needed the time to allow all these to develop, and they have developed as a way of doing business. The customers know what they stand for. The suppliers and channels support the company's competitive advantages, and it improves all the activities and fit. Makes managing easy. And this is, I guess, a repeat of a couple of the earlier slides. Base principles are taught and internalized by everybody there. It improves focus and simplicity of strategy, and decisions get made at lower levels. And then there it is. That's a proof that it was the second time I showed it. How does IKEA continue to do so well? They reduce the distance between management and the front line. And this goes back to a principle that I told you about a couple of weeks ago, that in best practices. And what we want to do is reduce the silos and the distance between different levels of a company's organization. And better information allows us to do that. And that means better IT. That means you can decide better and faster, and you master the art of continuous improvement. Now, some people think if I just change one of the things, I'll be able to copy my competitor. Back in World War II in New Guinea, the Japanese invaded and were later driven out by the Americans. And this is during World War II. And both groups, Japanese and American, were supplied by airplanes, silver airplanes that flew in and dropped off cargo. And this was so astounding. I mean, even in the Western world, the idea of flight was no more than a decade old. But people in that area had never seen anything that flew and assumed that this was really an animate object, that it really was like a bird. And after the war, there were people in New Guinea who set up what's called a cargo cult, where they built planes out of wood. And as you see in the distance, they even built the towers that would allow the people to use the microphones to help the planes land and take off, trying to attract from the sky some of these silver birds that would have the cargo in it. And that's one of the follies of trying to copy one thing in a strategy and think that that'll make it work. For example, trying to offer just a very narrow slice of inventory or by trying to put name tags on everything. Those alone won't do anything for you. It's everything put together. Now to move to the opposite side of the sophistication, this is Richard Feynman, a Nobel laureate who was at Caltech. And he makes the same kind of idea that the form is perfect. It looks exactly the way it looked before, but it doesn't work. So I call these things cargo cult science because they follow all the apparent precepts and forms, but they're missing the essential parts. Richard Feynman is a very entertaining writer, and I commend you to reading him because you would enjoy his work. But this is what he's saying is that it is not pieces. It is the whole puzzle that has to be put together in a strategy to make it work. So, by golly, you stayed. Thank you. I feel very, very rewarded by your having stayed this long. But go back and study these when I put them out there for you, which I will do tonight. And I think that you'll learn something for our conversation that we're going to have about Ikea in a couple of weeks. You think about this also in terms of the things in the enterprise case, because they too have developed a system that's uniquely different from everybody else in the marketplace. So that's all that I can, all the damage I can do tonight, and I'm feeling pretty good for doing some pickup work with a lost day. So I'll let you all go home and be prepared to really do a good case for me for